Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to V with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Utah, the show of whiskey, the show of post-Vietnam, San Antonio. Today's guest is the amazing proprietor in Texas sales for High West whiskey out of Utah, Mr. Chris Furtado. It's been an amazing week for High West, and in fact, it will be High West Whiskey Week at Show to V. First, we'll talk with Chris today, and then the amazing founder, David Perkins, this Thursday. But it was recently announced that High West was acquired and purchased by Constellation Brands for $160 million. That is an amazing amount of money to expand their production and share even more great whiskey with you guys. Chris was pouring some of the new juice at Whiskeys of the World this year, and I have to say it's excellent stuff. Can't wait till we try the 2-year High West produced whiskey coming to a store near you very soon. So hope you guys enjoy this chat with Chris Furtado.
Everybody's always asking, well, how do you like to drink it?
Right.
Or what's your favorite whiskey? Or, any of those questions. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a loaded question.
Sure.
All right. Because, I'm like, what's the weather like?
Mm-hmm.
What mood am I in? Who am I with?
Yeah.
What do I want? I mean, every day is a different experience.
What if it's been a really, really difficult, back-breaking week? You're down, you're at your home, mm-hmm. You're going to turn on a movie, and you want a glass of something. What is the best thing for you? Stress drinking, as they say.
The unwinding drink. Well, usually I do my unwinding, I have a tradition in my house. I cook dinner every night.
Yeah, wow.
And so I drink whiskey I drink cocktails while I'm cooking. And so that's kind of my unwinding time. And I drink something I drink something that's more refreshing.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to drink quite a bit of it.
You're good at it now. You're real good at drinking
there's
now.
There's no such thing as mini drinks at my house.
Right.
I do very large drinks. So I want something that's going to be long and, something like a double rye Collins, a sour, a mule, something like that. I love daiquiris and things like that as well. So,
daiquiris.
Given just depends on my mood at that moment,
Yeah.
what works. But I'll drink something nice and long and tall. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a good approach to dating, too.
Sometimes the bigger the drink, the better, right?
Supposedly. Well, it's good. So you're in town doing some staff training at Twin this morning, you said. And I last time I remember us being in the same room, maybe it was one of the happy hours you did down at Geraldine's for High West, but perhaps also was the holiday party. I know I've seen you there probably a couple years.
Yeah.
All dressed to the nines. Mm-hmm. You're in Texas so much, it begs the question, are you a Texan originally?
Oh, I live in Texas.
Oh, you do? Where do you live?
I live in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Oh, shit, okay.
Okay. So they wanted to hire a Texan to sell Utah whiskey. Someone who spoke the language.
Yeah.
Someone who had those contacts. So back at the time, I worked for the distributor, Republic.
Yeah.
And I had let my bartending buddies who were still in the industry, I was like, you guys know all these ambassadors and stuff. You see people that I don't. Why don't, if you hear something, I'm like, I'm happy here. But if you hear something, so...
But maybe.
Yes, maybe, yeah. If the right thing comes along. And the right thing came along. Literally within 24 hours, a little over 48 hours, I had already pretty much accepted the position. We just going through formalities.
Yeah.
So I found a great thing. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time in Texas, all over the state.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Primarily, I'm traveling. I'm bopping between Austin, Dallas, and Houston.
Yeah.
A good amount in San Antonio, but not as much as the other three. And, everybody, it's a running joke. Wherever I go, it's like, Chris, we don't see you. We don't see, even in my hometown, Chris, we never see you. And I was like, I hear that wherever I go. It doesn't matter because with one High West person in the state of Texas,
you're busy.
You can imagine,
very, very busy.
And you have every bar and every retail account that you're supposed to be calling on.
Yeah.
So It's reached the point where I can only, really work with the up and coming accounts, or the really good ones that I want to support, that are doing volume, and I want to help them do more, and they're really promoting the brand. And those are the accounts that I go and spend.
Well, it's a good team to be on. High West, we'll talk about more about kind of the product offerings and things in a bit, but yeah, I mean that's a winning team. You've got a great reputation, and it's people are going to love you in the market,
Oh, absolutely. And then that's one of the things when I made the decision to go work for High West. I had to work with a spirit that I enjoyed. Because if I'm going to drinking it all the time, it's got to be something.
You have to.
And I like to say I'm a terrible salesman, so I want something that sells itself. High West sells itself.
Yeah.
It's a good whiskey. It's an honest story. It's a good story. We've got a lot of great, people behind the brand, smart people.
Yeah.
So it makes my job easier. If I had to go out there and fight people to buy High West, I wouldn't have this job.
And part of it, actually, the big burden for anybody would be the personality. But I think you have such a great reputation too, from what I understand. People really speak highly of you. So yeah, you have a whiskey that sells itself, which may give you momentum as a great person too. Those two things kind of working symbiotically.
Absolutely, it's very much true. It's funny, when I was first hired, actually, when I was waiting for my paper, everybody knew I was going to work. And our VP of sales at the time came to Dallas, and he was visiting accounts, and he knew he was going to hire me, and he actually had me out to an account. He's like, "Why don't you? I know you're still working for somebody else, but come and watch and learn." And I was like, "Sure, I can spend an hour hanging out with you." And so I did, and he went to one of my friends' accounts and presented the whole High West line, and my friend sits there and listens to it. And it's Rocco Milano. I don't know if you know Rocco, and he went through the whole spiel, and Rocco's like, "Yeah, it's great whiskey." He goes, "I'll bring it all in as soon as you hire Chris."
Ah, yes.
And so Matt was like, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll see what we can do." So he goes off on his day, and it's visiting other accounts.
Yeah.
And I go out and do my normal job. And at the end of the day, he invites me out to dinner. So I meet him for dinner. And he's like, "I was at one of your friends' accounts." And I was like, "Well, I'm sure you probably at a couple of my friends' accounts. But yeah, which one?" "Oh, I was at FT33. I was like, "Oh, so how's Lauren?" "She's great. She said that she's going to bring it all in as soon as you're hired." And I told her, "I guess I'm hiring the right guy." And she was like, "Yeah, you are hiring the right." So hiring me,
the future in politics is already being paved.
Well, I don't know. I'm not about that. I got the drinking part down for politics, but I don't know about anything else. It was one of those things that there was so much low hanging fruit. I was primarily hired for my relationships. The people I knew in the business in Dallas and in the whole state of Texas. I had the relationships, which is primary for this job.
This industry, man. And that's one of the things, and we kind of touch and go in email, but you're finally kind of down here and we're sitting, and the thing is, like, sometimes we don't get deep enough with each other, right? Because it is such kind of a transactional environment or climate, and obviously if you're saying hi to one of your friends at a bar and it's 3 deep, it's very difficult to have these kind of like a deeply engaging kind of interactions with people. So that's one of the reasons that I have people over and kind of sit and talk with them, because it's like, well, I didn't know you worked at Republic, and would you call yourself I know you live in Dallas, but did you grow up in Texas as well?
I was an Air Force brat, so I grew up all over the place, including overseas. But since 1975, I've lived in Texas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty much.
Any exciting overseas spots? I mean, there's a couple people too that have been Army brats.
I lived in the Philippines at the end of the Vietnam War.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So like when all the refugees came over, when all of the POWs came back.
Yeah.
They came to Clark Air Force Base, which is where I lived. So
how old are roughly?
I was about 10 at the time.
So that actually left an impression.
Oh, absolutely. One of the POWs came to my elementary school, and he wanted to see kids. He hadn't seen kids in a while.
Yeah.
And so I was the one who took him around and escorted him. My sisters, remember the old metal bands that they had for the POWs?
Right.
They got to give those to the POWs and stuff. So it was really amazing. My sisters and my mom took care of the orphans, when they landed and stuff. So it was an amazing time to be part of that part of history.
Wow.
My dad was in Vietnam. He didn't go into combat or anything.
Right.
He was there while the war was there, but obviously right at the tail end.
Wow.
So it was amazing to say, hey, we were there for that part of history.
That is an amazing apex of history. People coming back and being glad to see you. I mean, think about that. It's like the first kids that they see when they're getting out of these terrible circumstances.
Yeah.
It's pretty brilliant. So how long were you in the Philippines then?
2.5 years.
And then when did you guys head back to the States after that?
Then we came back and moved to San Antonio, and I've lived there ever since. Yeah,
because there's the base there, right?
Yeah, there's like 4 bases. There were 4 bases. So my dad ended up retiring in San Antonio.
Yeah. So did your mom was she like teaching? Was she just kind of hanging out? Was she a house mom? What she do?
She was an officer's wife. So
wow. I want to be like delicate about it because I didn't grow up military, but
yeah, she's actually until we were all in high school. Then she did get some part-time jobs.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But that was still back in late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as common as it is now.
So coming into San Antonio, that's where really the formative years kind of take hook, right? So
Absolutely.
High school and junior high. What was San Antonio like at that point? It kind of predates anybody that I've talked to that's really been in San Antonio as it kind of came into its own.
Very much, it was, the same but different.
Yeah.
Okay, it was very much a military and tourist city. Obviously, there wasn't the diversity of culture in terms of, hey, now we have all these great fine dining and,
right.
All that kind of stuff. It was very much, Mexican food and barbecue
and,
and Lone Star. And that was it. There wasn't anything fancy about it, but it was a place where people came. And
still good food there, man.
Absolutely.
Some of the best taquerias I've ever been to.
Absolutely.
Easily. And so what is it like socially, though? What kinds of things were you getting into trouble? Did you find it like a nice crowd to hang out?
My parents were fairly trusting, so we had this is back, I graduated from high school in 1982.
Okay.
This is back when it was illegal to drink when you're 18.
Yeah.
All right. So
lovely.
It was like, and it was a whole. In that regard, talk about our business. It was a whole different scene back then.
Yeah.
Because literally, first time I went into a bar was at 16.
God, that's crazy.
And it was like I looked like I was old enough, and so hey, 16, 18, there's not that much variance in
right.
appearance. So I started back when I was 16. Not heavy, but my first experiences with that. So
were your folks they were because my folk, or at least my mom, was really ardently against drinking. Were your parents kind of open to it?
Absolutely
Didn't
not.
care?
No, they didn't care. They were very much hey, they drank. My dad came home, had a beer or two a night.
Yeah.
My mom had cocktails. And it's like, oh, you want to try it? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think that's a good attitude. That's the way I work with my kids.
Yeah.
I was like, if you make it forbidden candy, then as soon as
you're creating an allure, man.
Exactly. Yeah. My kids are like, I see that stuff all the time. They really don't care. I'm like, hey, you want to? They're like, what are you drinking? Whiskey? Like, you want to try it? It's really good. Gross. So it reinforces that.
It's the best medicine for parents, isn't it?
I tell them, hey, you know what? If you screw up with booze, that costs me my job.
Oh, true. Good point,
I'm like, you can't get in trouble because that means no money for you, no house. They're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
So,
how old are your kids?
So I have 2 that live with me. I've got a 16-year-old and 8. He'll be 18 in a week and a half.
Man, prime time.
Yeah. So I have kids that could get into a lot of trouble, but
sure.
But
it's kind of like if you're cool and you're open and you communicate and kind of just have this nice, transparent relationship, they'll be that same way, right?
Absolutely.
That's what I always thought.
Yeah. It's like it set the expectation from day one. It was like, how can you leave? You're gone all the time. How can you leave your kids? I'm like, because I trust them.
Yeah.
That and my sister lives, 15 houses.
Yeah.
But
they
still.
probably don't want me around that much anyway right now,
Exactly. They don't care. It's like, I feel bad, I come back to town. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend all my time with my kids and they're out. I'm like,
they're doing their own thing anyway, right?
I'm like, great. I'm glad I stayed home tonight. I could be out, I'm drinking. I could be hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
So.
It happens. But so San Antonio, 82, what kinds of things? Were you an academic student? Were you more creative?
So I was, first 3 years of high school was more sports. I didn't play. I was a trainer. So
okay.
I was
like
the head
personal
student trainer. I was the head student trainer.
Oh, geez. Okay.
For the football team and track and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was the one fixing everybody up. I quit that. My senior year, I was just devoted to being a senior, having a good time.
Yeah.
I was senior class vice president, not president. Conscious choice. I'm like, vice president doesn't have to do anything.
You were the Biden of the school.
Yeah, I was like, hey, I just have to be here and hang out, and advise. I'm like, I don't have to do any work. I'm not responsible. So I did that. We had a really good, good time. I had a friend who actually lived with me. He lived in California, but he wanted to graduate with the rest of his class in Texas. So his mom let him live his senior year with me.
Oh, man.
So there were 2 of us. It was like I had an extra brother that year.
That's so cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Our thing was, we we had a lot of great parties.
Yeah.
We lived on the outskirts. Well, what was the outskirts back then? Right just south of 1604.
Okay.
So that was mostly farmland north of that at that point. So we had a lot of pasture parties.
Oh man,
we were big. What
does one drink at a pasture party?
Kegs.
Kegs.
Someone's got a truck. You roll a keg out there, and you just sit there and drink. Someone brings bottles and stuff.
It's amazing.
But that was because we had 18-year-old friends, and you could drink. So
sometimes our parents really have this heavy influence on where we end up, of course. And so was your dad in any way saying, "Hey, Chris, you should do the military thing too," or did he want you to not do that? Like
he said
high school?
He said no, don't do that.
Don't do it.
Don't do that.
So
of course, I ended up going to A&M, which is I didn't go in the Corps, but that's military influence.
Yeah. Oh, sure. What area of study there?
Chemical engineering.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that something that, because I'm trying to paint the dots here, or connect the dots.
Well, it's crazy because, I think that if I'd grown up in like this day and age with all this stuff you see about culinary stuff and spirits and, brewing and distilling, I would have led a different life. But back in the early 80s,
different deal.
You didn't get to see that. So, the expectation was you make good grades, you go to college, you pick a career, and that's it. And it's like, well, you're 18. What do you know when you're 18?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know squat. So I knew that I liked chemistry. I took 4 years of chemistry in high school. And so I was like...
Willingly?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I was like, well, engineers get paid a lot of money. I like chemistry. I should be a chemical engineer.
Makes sense on paper, doesn't
it? Yeah, it was great. And of course, chemical engineering, one of the hardest majors there is. So I was like,
you're really bright.
Well, I ended up, and it was one of those things where I graduated in 4 years. I worked my ass off.
Amazing.
I went to school 2 summers. I went pretty much constantly. I took 1 summer off my whole career. But in '86, when we were graduating, it was the middle of the oil crunch. And so if you didn't have a job, in '85, already lined up, then you didn't have a job when you graduated.
Oh, man.
So, of course, what do? Well, I live in College Station.
What do you do?
Worked in bars and restaurants, you know. And so I ended up staying there for another 4 years. No, 5 years.
In College Station?
In College Station, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and then I moved up here in '91, and I was bartending the whole time. And it was just like, you know what? You reach a point, and, employers are like, well, you have this degree, which is great, but you never used it. I'm like, and I'm making money doing my thing, so I'm like, why?
It doesn't really matter much, does it? It's like, well, I have it, but I kind of like this other thing.
Well, yeah, and I was bartending, so and again, back then there wasn't as much craft spirits and stuff like that. So
because we're talking probably, you said '86, right?
Yeah, I graduated in '86 from college. I moved up here in '91, and I worked at really one of the best bars in Dallas at the time, Houston's Restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Houston's was one of the originals. They used squeezed juice to order, and that they used, the little bitty bottles of soda, not a gun.
Yeah.
And so they had, I wouldn't call them craft, but they were that forerunner back in '91 of people going in that direction, especially in Texas.
Yeah. But did it mean something to you yet? Like, was it just like, oh, this is a thing they do, or rather, did you?
No, it was. I realized the quality of that product.
Wow. In the early '90s too. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, it's really ahead of the curve there.
Absolutely, it was really crazy, and I don't think they got enough credit, but they really did a lot of stuff. Of course, they didn't do any. Their brandy Alexander was made with ice cream. Kind of.
Yeah.
So there's some things where they kind of a little off.
It's like right in the middle once everything's added together, right?
Exactly. So but that was a good experience.
You must love people then. It seems like VP, the kind of the party cabinet position in a sense, right? Like, I do think of Biden. I think he's a wonderful prototype for a VP. But
I think that I'm one of those extroverted introverts. Because I'm not someone who gets really energized by being in crowds, but I am someone who can sit down and have a conversation. Even more so since I'm on this side of the bar. Mm-hmm. I used to say I love bartending because that way I've got 3 feet between me and everybody.
Yeah,
and
true.
I can sit there and I can have conversations and I can build up relationships. I had regulars and stuff, and I'm really good at that. But a lot of times, I'm more of a few really good friends than a whole bunch of friends kind of thing.
Totally.
But I found that when I switched to this side of the bar, I guess I blossomed a little bit as far as my outgoingness because. Part of what I do is just to sit down at bars and talk to people, and
it's not different. It's just in a different array and like array,
Yeah, it's like, hey, I strike. I have accounts that, they know that High West doesn't have a ton of money like some of these big guys, right? And so, when they say, oh, well, we put you on the menu, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. Why? I can't, help you out or anything. And they're like, no, you just do what you do. And I was like, what do I do? And they're like, well, you come in and sit at the bar and you talk to people about High West.
Yeah.
And you get them excited and they go and do that stuff. And I was like, oh, and you buy drinks. I'm like, well, yeah, I want people to try my whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's funny because bosses at one point, they're like, your tabs are higher than everybody else's. I'm like, well, because I buy people drinks. I'm like,
yeah, they should
what's
taste it.
I'm like, yeah, how can people know that they like it? I'm like, guarantee you, if you put it in people's mouths, they're going to like it. They're going to buy it again. He's like, you don't know that. And I was like, okay, you want to hear a story? I'm like, I'll tell you a story. So I was at the Windmill Lounge in Dallas, New Year's Eve, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my friends and we're drinking whiskey, and these two guys come in, one older guy and like his grandson or nephew or something, and they start ordering whiskeys, old fashioned and a Manhattan or something. And of course, bartenders who know me, if I'm sitting at the bar and someone orders a whiskey drink, they'll look at me and they'll give me that head shake. and that's that, hey, Chris, and I'll say, yeah, if they it is
isn't it a weird thing that happens to me too sometimes, where it's like, oh, gin, oh, right, shit, okay, then you go and enter stage left.
It's like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, this gentleman over here will buy your drink if you drink High West. Yeah, we'll drink High West.
Yeah.
So I bought these two guys a drink. And of course, it strikes up a conversation. So they come over and we start talking, tell them about High West. We tell them about all this stuff. And we have a great conversation. And they actually have a second, which I was like, no, put it on me. It's fine. And then they say, oh, well, thank you very much. And, we're going on, visit another place. And I'm like, great, have a good night. And, they didn't pay for any drinks, but they tipped the bartender. So the bartender likes that. He makes extra cash. I ended up, one, I'm doing depletions. I'm helping him. I'm tipping on my tab, so the bartender doubles up and, everybody's happy, Totally. I'm selling whiskey. So I leave there and I'm heading back up north because I live up north in the colony. And I'm stopping off at Whiskey Cake, which is, was like my home bar. It's the bar last bar I bartended at.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a bartender at Whiskey Cake.
No kidding.
And so I'm like, I'll stop in for one over here. And so I sit down, and it's a pretty busy night, and I sit down at one side of the bar, and the bartender comes running up to me, Chris, these two dudes over here, they just ordered High West, and this was early on. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I look over there, and it's the two dudes I bought drinks for at the Windmill Lounge.
Amazing.
And I was like, well, they better be, because I just walked in with, and they see me, and they come running over, and they're like, hey, man, we just wanted to see if anybody else knew about this stuff. And it was like, yeah, well, you came to the right place because this is my bar too. So
it's a small ass world, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it works. I mean, if you have good juice,
people love to talk.
All you have to do is put it in people's mouth, and it strikes up a conversation.
Absolutely,
I've had so many conversations with people, interesting people. I was at Rambler, and I talked to a film producer, and all these different guys, and a lot of it is not normally. If it's just me, if it was just me and Chris wasn't Mr. Whiskey, then I just sit there and mind my own business, But
do you like this role? All the world's a stage, right? So do you like this role? Do you like being this guy?
There's a certain amount of pride in it.
Yeah.
It's funny when you're sitting in some place and someone screams from down the bar, "You're the whiskey guy!" And this is
indelicately, right?
It was like, this is like at 12:30 at night. She's been having a few. I know you. You're that whiskey guy. I went to that thing where you were at and you talked, and I was like, okay, that's pretty abstract, but yeah, I'm the whiskey guy. And she's like, come here, I want you to meet somebody. And so I was like, okay, I own it. But like you said, all the world's a stage. There's never a downtime for us, is there? I mean, and that's what, when my bartending friends are like thinking about, as more of them have done since I switched over, they're like, well, what do you think? And I was like, but it's not all just sitting at bars drinking and talking to your friends.
Right,
like,
of course not.
Especially, if you're a brand ambassador, true brand ambassador, then you have some education, staff training, stuff like that. But, and I think that's a misconception. Everybody considers me a brand ambassador.
You're kind of like operations.
But I'm everything. I have a significant portion of my job is sales and everything else. So balancing that out is, I get up at, 8 in the morning and I'm doing spreadsheets and conference calls and planning out incentives and stuff. And then oh, well, now I'm going to go out and visit retail stores. And then you go, oh, now I'm going to go out and visit, on-premise accounts.
Yeah.
So you got to do all that stuff.
How are you holding up physically? Does it take its toll on you?
I've gotten to the point where I've cut back as far as my nights out. I mean, I used to be out, 4, 5, 6 nights a week. Dallas probably suffers the worst because when I'm at home, I want to be at home.
Yeah, of course.
And I have enough work that I could be on my computer all day long.
Yeah.
So I tend to, not stay out as late as I used to and do something.
That's good though. I mean, it's a dangerous area to be in if you don't set those ground rules early on, right?
Oh, absolutely. I see, friends and they're just like, I'm like, I can't do that. I mean, there were times when I could do that, but I'm just like, I'm not doing that anymore.
No, and you don't have to do it to be successful. That's the thing people don't understand. You don't have to serve yourself up on a cross and just destroy your body for the sake of a brand. You don't have to do that.
Absolutely. And, you reach a point once your brand gets a certain size where you can't physically do it yourself anymore. Yeah. I mean, all these great accounts that we have in Texas that are buying and selling High West, I can't physically go in there and drink in every bar. There's no way. And then it's, where do I spend my time? And I was like, that's what we have distributors for. That's why we have our partners. I mean, they're distributor partners for a reason.
Yeah.
We need their help. They need to be out there doing their job. And I have a lot of, friends that I have conversations with, and they're like, okay, Chris, you're the old guy. Here's the situation. I'm like, man, you need to get your distributor working for you.
Yeah.
Because if they're not,
have them help, geez.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not, you're not going to be successful in the long run.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we can do. I mean, and especially, friends who are from the industry, they're used to working hard. And they don't mind working hard to get success.
Right.
But there reaches a point where you can't do it yourself anymore. It's like managing a restaurant.
But that's a good and a bad problem to have, right? Because need more resources, but you need more resources now. You're overextended. I mean, that's a great pinnacle to hit.
Well, when I was in Utah last week at the distillery, having dinner with our CEO and a bunch of our Republic managers, and the CEO says, well, we need more people in Texas. Chris can't do it all. And I was like, and he's like, no, you're doing a great job. It's a really big state.
Yeah, massive.
And so it's like I consider it. I tell everybody, it's like I got 3 states. I got Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio.
Exactly.
I mean, and Austin. I'm like, that's 3 different, and they're 3 different personalities, 3 different experiences. And really, when you look at the number of accounts that you need to support, it's pretty significant.
Well, it's any one of those single markets is as big as any other big market in a single state, right? That's the great thing about Texas, and that was something that never clicked with me for probably a couple of years while operating a distillery. It's like, oh, now I get why people play the Texas thing so hard. Like I thought it was just trying to take advantage of home court advantage, that kind of thing. But no, the reality is if you knock it out in Houston, that's like knocking out all of Illinois. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. It's that kind of important. It's just at
High West I have 4 people like me in the company that are dedicated resource for a specific state, and really, so I've got a partner in Illinois, which essentially she just does Chicago. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all she has to do. I got a partner who's New York, New Jersey, but pretty much she just does New York City, and that's all she does. Someone in Florida, she spends a good time. Florida's pretty spread out indoors. And then we've got a guy in California, but because we have a manager in Southern California, he really only does San Francisco. He kind of does a little bit more. But so everybody else is a lot more,
This got like a singular
geographically
focus.
centered.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas I'm a little more spread out. And it's funny because like when we have people come down for blitzes, okay, we're going to bring in a lot of resources. We're going to get sell a ton of whiskey in a week. So when we don't have a lot of volunteers to come to Texas because they know what it means.
Oh yeah.
Because we do Houston one day, we do Austin the next day.
Dude, it's
Dallas the next.
massive road trip.
That's we call it the Death March, and it's like that little triangle drive. And I was like, I do this all the time, guys, and it's just like because you're up, at 5 and driving to the next city.
Yeah.
And you have meetings, and then you go out and sell all day. Then you have a dinner, and you have a cocktail hour, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's 10 o'clock, and we got to get up at 5.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's rough, man.
Texas is it's an ass.
It is, but it's totally worth it. Always worth it.
Absolutely, I think the recognition. I mean, people will understand this is a tough state. I I think for a brand like High West, obviously Texas is the number one state for whiskey.
Sure.
And so it's crucial that we're successful here.
It's all on your shoulders, man.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure whatsoever.
So, I have an interesting question for you, because I think if College Station made sense with the chemical engineering thing, what took you to Dallas? Why Dallas, not go back to San Antonio, for example?
I don't.
Was
I
it
don't
girls?
know what it was.
It's always girls.
Well, my roommate was a girl.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
Nothing like
we
that.
weren't together.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where I thought that was the next place to go. I mean, it was one of those things. I hung out in College Station for a long time because I was having fun. I mean, I didn't. I mean, but then you reach the point where I'm 5 years older than all these people. Even the oldest people, I'm 5 years older than them. I'm like, I need something more mature. And road trips up here and stuff. And I'm like, no, I think there was a lot of great opportunity. Obviously, I think that Dallas has really grown into itself in terms of bars and restaurants, culinary scene, and all of that stuff.
So you transitioned. So when was, because you talk about working at Republic as well, and Whiskey Kick being your last bartending gig. Mm-hmm. So the collection of all those gigs you had doing bartending, like how many places are we talking about that you worked at in Dallas?
In Dallas?
Yeah.
Oh, this is gonna be crazy.
Quick inventory, Chris.
No, well, actually, because I actually took a break.
Oh, did you? What'd you do on the? Okay, we'll talk about the break.
We'll talk about that in a second. But let me do a quick count. So I had 3, and then I worked for Starbucks.
Yeah, all right. Was that the break? Is that kind of break?
No. Well, not really. I count that. There's a very strong similarity between being a barista and being a bartender.
Sure.
I actually opened up the market when Starbucks first came to Texas. I was one of the opening.
No kidding.
Yeah. And then after that, I went to then that led into my break. I was in computer software. I was a project manager for a computer software company.
You took a tech tangent.
Yeah, well, I had my kids at the time. I actually have 4 kids.
4 kids.
And my kids were, from not born yet till like 6 years old, and so the bartender lifestyle really doesn't play well with,
I totally understand. Was it were you married at the time, or okay? Was that something that your wife at the time was kind of like, or maybe it's the same wife? I don't know. I'm not going to assume, but like, was she's like, you need to?
No, well, actually,
was never
because
coming
I
from
met her when I worked at Starbucks, because she also worked at Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of like we were peas in the pod in that regard. But even when they were very, very young, and we were both working at Starbucks, I would have to work mornings and she would work nights. So we always had someone.
Gotcha. Coverage,
right? So that's kind of what led to it, is like, okay, we need something with more normal hours.
Yeah.
So, we can see each other and we can, be there for the kids and they can have a family life.
Crazy.
So did that for a long time. Well, from about 1999 until 2006.
Man, those were tough times for tech too.
Oh, well, yeah, and I left because it got even worse. Got even worse.
But that is a long departure if you think about it. Career-wise, did you finally leverage that chemical engineering degree at that point, or was it still?
No, it was. Organization and stuff, which are good traits for anybody to have. But I was really strong at that, and I could get stuff done. So and the other thing is I could talk to the people. I was that interface between the guys writing the software, because I could talk to them and I can understand their language and where they're coming from. And then I can understand the people requesting the software because they want all this. Then the kitchen sink, and these guys are saying yes, but it's going to take this long. And then I had to say no. I know how long this takes. It's going to take this long. So I think
you're the translator,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that came from my years of just communicating with people, making people happy in the bar.
Was it? Did you see ultimately, like, because I always wonder where people, and it's not like an interview question, but so they're in the industry for, let's say, 5 to 10 years. Like, well, isn't the normal trajectory that you open your own place? I mean, not to put that on anybody, but that typically is the trajectory, isn't it?
Typically, yeah. And it's crazy that I actually went into management when I was at Houston's.
Okay.
They were like, you should just run the bar, and I did.
Yeah.
But that was a little different style. It wasn't, you weren't making cocktail menus, and you weren't doing those kind of things because that was decreed, by corporate. And there really wasn't those kind of programs in place. And, I was managing, what brands we had. You didn't have, reps coming in selling you stuff all the time. You didn't have suppliers coming in. And, of course, there was a chain. So, it's a lot of those things had at bigger levels.
Yeah.
But, it was doing the numbers and scheduling and service and, standards and stuff like that. That's what it was all about. So it was a little bit different aspect of that. And, even when I moved back into it, I was a senior bartender, and
huge plethora of experience at that point.
Yeah, a well-seasoned bartender. And, I was coming in and I had learned the craft aspect kind of on my own.
Yeah.
All these cocktails and stuff. I just did it on my own. And, one of the things that really kind of relaunched my career was I represented the Bartenders Guild, the North Texas Bartenders Guild.
Okay.
At Tales of the Cocktail in a contest. Ended up getting second place in the country.
Really?
So that got me I met a lot of people. And, it's all about who you know.
It is, right.
And so that just started my network growing immensely. Then I became guild president. Mm-hmm. Well, then everybody wants to talk to you, right? So then, more people. So it really is a good opportunity to do that. I was never really the front man, though. I was not that bartender who got, I was making drinks. I was getting drinks on menu.
Yeah.
I was, usually, one of two bartenders that people would ask for when they came in. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't the star. I wasn't the name, in the
Do you listen to Radiohead at all?
Occasionally, yeah.
So, there's Tom York. Everybody knows Tom York. But Johnny Greenwood's the brains.
Right.
But no one knows because he just sits there and he does the work. Right? So I always think it's like you're like that rhythm guitar player that puts his head down, gets the work done, but everybody knows him, but he's not the vocal one.
Right. So, at Whiskey Cake, I don't know if you know Sean Connor. Sean, well known, worked at Victor Tango's. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. My son actually works for him in his new restaurant.
No shit.
Yeah, my son's going into the business.
That's amazing. How do you feel about that, real quick? Is it?
It was actually a moment of a little bit of pride.
That's amazing. Yeah.
He was looking for his first job, and I was like, well, I know some guys. Maybe I can get you a job.
Yeah.
And so he got a job, and he took to it like a fish to water. He was
go figure, right?
He was like, oh yeah, and he's like, we did this and this and they're doing that wrong. I was like, okay, you're not a bartender. You can't tell people they're doing things wrong, even though I've taught you skills and stuff. But and so
3 years, right?
Yeah. And so the thing is that he just graduated from high school. His entire high school career, he was focused on art. He's an artist, and he wanted to design video game environments. He did concept design. He had his school picked out, everything. He was going to take a year off and just work, earn money. And he came to me like 3 weeks ago and says, Dad, I think I changed my mind. I was like, really? He goes, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now. I think I might want to go into the hospitality industry.
Wow. And
I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I was like, all right, if that's what you want to do. That's pretty cool. And I was like, hey, I'm teaching my whiskey class at UNC in their hospitality program next week. Why don't you come on in? And so we took him up there. So it's kind of cool, having someone.
It's following in your footsteps, man. That's awesome.
And it was really crazy because he said, I want to, go into Bart Sing, run a program, manage, have a restaurant maybe. And he goes, maybe someday I want to do what you do. And I was like, well, I don't know how many 18-year-olds are saying they want to be a supplier rep.
I know.
And I was like, okay, well, we'll take that with a grain of salt. And so it's funny because I took him out. We went out to lunch one time, and we were going around San Antonio or Dallas. And I was like, all right, I got to do some work. And so we stopped by some of my accounts. We had a lunch at Remedy with Monte and, went to Henry's Majestic. I was like, but I got to hit some retail accounts too. So we hit 2 or 3 retail accounts. By the last one, he's just like bored out of his mind.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I just can't do that, Dad. I was like, all right, well, that's why I took you to see. It's like,
see, that's good.
It's like, it's
the ghost of Christmas past.
Well, the thing is like, look, everybody grows into it. There reaches a point where most guys are gonna say, hey, I can't bartend anymore. Oh, I can, but it's just like wearing me down.
Right.
And so you need something different. And so this is one route to go. But going all the way back to your question about your own place, I imagine that when I retire, I'll retire to my own place.
Yeah.
I will.
You have all the skills now.
To me, that would be retirement. I, have my own place. Probably have my son help me run it.
Oh, yeah.
My kids. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't have much of a retirement savings at this point. I've been running my whole life, so I'm like, yeah, I imagine someday. But and actually, I'm probably more connected now in that regard. I could probably get more funding or investors now than I could back in the day
because you've got the reputation. You're doing good work,
right?
Yeah, for sure. And so, why before we enter what is the latest chapter, as we've been sipping this amazing rye, but why did you shift? Was it to learn, or was it just another kind of stalemate? Why did you shift over to the distribution side, over with Republic?
It was at the time I left Whiskey Cake. I interviewed. There was an opportunity, and for the mixologist at RNDC. And so Sean, boss, he's like, I got you an interview with these guys. I was like, all right, well. And apparently he thought that I couldn't interview and work at the same time. So he's like, but you need to quit. And I was like,
just for an interview?
It was a really weird situation.
That's strange, yeah.
It was a weird situation. So I was like, all right. I was like, I need to work. I need money. He's like, you'll get the job. It's fine. Well, after a month, and I was like, the thing is that I had other gigs going on at the same time. I did a lot of catering and stuff.
Okay. Were you cooking for the catering?
I did a little bit of everything.
I know it, man. You talk about cooking yourself dinner every
day.
day.
Well, actually, I started off in the business as a cook. I mean, from the time I was 16 till I was, I don't know, when I was in college, I was still cooking.
Really?
Yeah. So I for a long time, I had more time in the kitchen experience than I did behind the bar.
So it's just inevitable until you open your own place. It's got to, man. It's got to. But anyways, that's an aside, and I might hold you to it here in 20 years or whatnot. But so how'd the interview go? Did you like doing the corporate thing in a way?
The crazy thing is that I interviewed for the mixologist position and created a whole menu, and we did all this thing. I had like 3 interviews and a presentation with drinks and everything, and it came down to 2 people, me or a girl. Girl won, which is
makes some sense. I get it.
Well, it's still like, all right, it is what it is. I'm still doing my catering thing and helping out and doing stuff. And a week later, the position of craft specialist was vacated.
Oh,
and it's funny because the guy vacating was a friend of mine. He's and Kobe Lyles, and he's like, hey man, he goes, you don't want that job. He goes, you want my job. And so he's like, I'll tell Whitney, the boss, that he should talk to you and just hire you for that job.
Amazing.
And then one of the senior mixologists, Sly Cosmopoulos, said, hey, I'm gonna get in your camp too. And so I get a call from Whitney, who I had already interviewed with twice for the mixologist position. He's like, so what do you think about doing this craft specialist thing? I was like, yeah, I can talk about it.
Sure.
So he's like, meet me over here. We met at a bar. We had like 6 or 8 drinks and just talked about it. He's like, yeah, you got the job.
Amazing.
Which turned out to be the job I really wanted. I didn't know it at the time, but it was the better job. And it was funny because Naomi, the girl who got the mixologist job, she
didn't like it.
She didn't like it. She goes, you won. I was like, you won the job. You beat me.
You won this round.
But you got the good job. Yeah. And I was like, yeah. I think that the value in being at RNDC, one, it gave me exposure to a lot of brands, not just, the products, but the people.
Yeah.
I was only with them for 15 months, which isn't a long time, but it was very much kind of a trying on process, me getting to know suppliers.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some suppliers that I swore I thought I was going to end up working with. I was really tight with William Grant. They really
love those guys.
Those guys are awesome. St. George, the guys at St. George, I spent a lot of time with.
Yeah.
Hanging out with them, selling their stuff, pushing, and I loved their juice. I mean, both.
Yeah, it's
both
great.
companies.
Paul was in here a couple months ago.
Yeah,
real good dude.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's was one of those things I thought and we talked about it. It's like, yeah, when there's an opportunity that suits you, we would love for you to come work with us. But I got this opportunity first.
Yeah,
and so I was like, I'm jumping on it.
You have to. Which brings us to perfectly. Thank you for that segue, Chris. So we're here. It's a lovely but incredibly scorching afternoon in Austin. You're in town, and you are so wonderfully sharing the Rendezvous rye with me. Mm-hmm. Non-chill filtered. We'll talk about the blending and stuff here in a second. It was 46 ABV.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I finished it already ahead of you.
I'm ready for more.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, absolutely am actually. But I actually lived in Salt Lake City for quite some time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this, to think that booze became a thing, because this was in the late 90s when I lived there.
Oh, yeah.
It just boggles my mind. So the fact that they pulled it off, because
absolutely,
from my understanding, they had to push legislation through to allow themselves to operate more or less. Is that kind of the case, or?
No, it is a really interesting story. It took David quite a few years. what happened was at the time he was a biochemist.
Yeah.
He worked for a pharmaceutical company called Genentech.
Genentech, yeah.
And you've heard of it. And he and his wife went to Kentucky for, actually they were in Ohio for a wedding. They decided, let's pop down and go see a distillery. So they went to Maker's Mark. And David walked in there and just, that smell, you know, and it was like, wow, he was blown away. And he's like, this is awesome. And then, you know, he goes on the tour and he realizes, he goes, hey man, this is exactly what I'm doing. It's the same process.
Sure.
Distillation, whether it's for making drugs or making, you know, it's all yeast, it's all bioengineering. It's the same thing.
Totally, right.
He's like, I'd rather distill. And so he goes to James' wife. He's like, I want to start a distillery. And she was like, that's cool. My grandfather was a distiller.
Whoa.
And he's like, I didn't know.
Holy crap.
And so like, okay, great. And of course they're living in Northern California. So they're like, well, you know, where are we going to do this? David, you know, was born in Colorado and he wanted to go back to the mountains, and they decided on Park City. They wanted to be in Utah, Park City, right? Yeah. So obviously it was an uphill battle. He had to do his research. To my understanding, he didn't have to have legislation passed. He found a license on the books that really no one knew about, and he actually went in and applied for this license, and the state was like, we don't think this is legal. And he's like, whips out the book and says, you know, yeah, it is right here. And they're like, oh, okay, go ahead.
That's amazing.
You know, it was one of those things.
It's like finding a buried treasure, isn't it?
It is. Well, and that was, you know, we were the first legal distillery since 1870 in Utah. Wow. You know, license number 1 in Utah. And so it's really interesting in that the state of Utah has been very cooperative.
I bet.
Very cooperative.
They're very progressive, despite what people might think. Yeah.
They had to change a lot of laws to get the Olympics. Because, you know, when they're like, sorry, ain't nobody going to come here if they can't drink.
Right. Totally.
You know? And so that was a big impetus. And then you think about just the number of tourists and all of that, you know. And so, you know, I think that it really swung really far. And I think in some places it's tightening back up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it really, I mean, they really handle it by, they have like a gazillion different types of liquor licenses. So it depends on the type of license, you know. So there's one, a certain amount of food, certain amount of this, certain amount of that. You can go to 2 o'clock in the morning. This, you can go to 10 o'clock. All these, literally, our new distillery has like 6 licenses for different
things.
Different scenarios. We were the first one to get an educational license in Utah, which means that we can serve more than one shot of booze.
As long as you're talking about it educationally.
As long as it's educational and it's got to be in a special room, you know, we can close the doors and kids can't see in.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
there's some control for sure.
There's some stuff because we did. I was there a month ago, and I was doing a tasting with Carly out on the. We were like, let's eat lunch out on the porch.
Oh, I saw some pictures. If I recall, it was quite scenic.
Yeah, it was awesome. So we were sitting out there eating lunch, and we're like, oh, we're doing a tasting. They're like, well, we can only give you one at a time. So they were like, bring us one. We taste through that, and then bring us the next one. So you just got to learn how to work the law in Utah. So, but yeah, it's been fairly successful.
It's crazy to think of it, that it's shifted that much forward, you know. Mm-hmm. And you guys do some really interesting things. There's a Midsummer's Night's Dram, right? Which was
Midwinter's Night Dram.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been talking about Shakespeare today for some fucking reason. I don't know why. But you guys are really known for innovating, using particular barrel treatments. Mm-hmm. And what I think, though, like, would you consider kind of the flagship product, the Rendezvous Rye? That's the one I see so often, but you guys have plenty of other stuff.
Well, it really depends on the way you measure that. You know, what's the most popular product? Right. We sell more double rye than anything else.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, that's going into cocktails though. I mean, it's a volume cocktail kind of thing. It is our number one seller. Rendezvous Rye is our original one. Mm. It is our highest rated whiskey. It's most consistently the whiskey that people pick as their favorite.
Yeah. Really lovely.
Yeah, this is I call it my desert island whiskey.
Totally, man.
Now, I'm working at RNDC. Obviously, I got to drink a lot of really good whiskey.
Yeah.
And I still get to drink a lot of really good whiskey because I have friends and who want to trade. And so I come home from events and I have some good whiskeys. I like good whiskey.
Yeah. So do you think, and briefly, age does not always make a good whiskey? Because I don't know how old this is, and it doesn't actually matter. But this Rendezvous Rye is balanced, not too punchy. Everything is encapsulated perfectly with the wood. And so this could be 2 years. I don't know. It's probably not 2 years. But it's incredible.
It's a 6 and a 16.
Yeah.
And I think it's very true. I mean, I don't remember who was telling me. One of my Scotch buddies was telling me a story, and his distiller always, when people go on the tours, he always throws it out there. Who wants, a 5-year Scotch or a 20-year Scotch?
Yeah.
And everybody's hand shoots up with a 20-year Scotch, right?
Yeah.
So he brings out this barrel that he purposely saves because it's crap.
Yeah.
It's like, because it could mildew, it could, something
over tannic, it could just be gross. Yeah.
And so he's like, here you go, here's a 20, and just to prove a point, here's the 5. I'm like, wow, this 5 is so much better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yes, it's every barrel is different. You don't know for sure what you're going to get. That's why everybody blends.
Yeah.
And I know it's a big deal for everybody. High West is a blender. Yeah, we're a blender. And we disclose it because we buy from other distilleries.
Right.
But Maker's Mark blends. Everything's a blend. Every whiskey's a blend.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that. Anybody who does their homework knows every whiskey's a blend unless it says single barrel on the label.
Right.
There's more than one barrel in there because if you're going to have consistent flavor, you have to take this really woody barrel over here and mix it with this sweet one over there.
Absolutely.
To get the whiskey you want.
Do you think people have a problem with the blending part? It just makes so much sense to me.
There's a prejudice in America. In Europe, this doesn't exist. There are a lot of really great scotches made by guys who never owned a distillery.
Yeah.
But they're really good at finding good whiskey, tasting it, and then knowing how to blend it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever tried. I've tried blending before, and it is a pain in the butt. I'm really good at identifying good whiskey.
Yeah.
Yes, that tastes delicious. But if I have to blend, I'm like, no. I mean, the guys who do it drink, a lot of whiskey.
Yeah.
Do a taste.
The only time I've had to blend, but it's slightly different, is when we made the sotol, and so blending the puntas and the colas into the hearts. That is because you could do any one of the sections separately if you wanted, right? You could just puntas heavy, right? Mm-hmm. Just puntas. But that's the closest I've ever come. And so with whiskey, I can only imagine. There's like, man, this is a really woody barrel. This is a really light and not as tannic barrel. This is a sweet one. And just, I don't even know what the ratios would begin to look like.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the thing that's really exciting to me because I would love to do that at some point. And you guys are, with this rye, obviously a brilliant expression of how the blending is masterful, that it is a key point to making a good whiskey. I
mean, our team up there, they're just so good because they can when they're doing tasting, they're tasting from a barrel. They're like, oh, this would be really good with this.
Yeah.
And going back to experimentation, most of our expressions, our core 4, if you will, they're pretty much set as way they're going to taste. So basically, we're working to maintain that profile. So like now, we've been saying for the longest time, double rye is a 2 and a 16-year-old blend.
Yeah.
2-year-old for the spices, 16-year-old smoothing out.
Sure.
It's going to migrate. It's going to change over time. That 16-year-old whiskey is going to run out at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's purchased stuff that we got from Barton Distillery.
Yeah.
And so it's going to run out. And so we have to have a plan to do something else. So we're doing lots of experimentation. We're looking at, how do we create a more flavorful whiskey faster?
Yeah.
That whole
holy
aging,
grail, really.
And we have some unique aspects in Utah with how dry it is up there. It influences the aging process. Really, the Angel Share we found, we're not really for sure on how the influence, but we found in the Angel Share we lose more water than alcohol.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, so actually proof goes up in the barrel.
Right.
Whereas normally it comes down.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So what would happen if we put in something at a low proof and let it come up in proof?
And you condense a low proof.
You condense the flavor in it, right?
That's a brilliant idea.
So we do a lot of experimentation. David's a scientist, and so he's like, well, let's try this.
One chemical engineer to another engineer, right?
And Midwest Night Dram was an experiment. At one point, Matt, our former VP of sales, he owned his own winery, and so he's like well connected in the winery. And David's like, get us a bunch of wine barrels and let's see what happens. So we got port, we got this, we got the Coupe Syrah, we got Vie Vermouth, which turned in Coupe Syrah and Vie Vermouth is the PKA. And so we actually have a program we call Barrel Select. So what we'll do is we'll take a whiskey and we'll throw it in a barrel, and after a year or two, if it tastes good, then we'll sell it to an account. So they'll have an exclusive barrel, something unique, and then the ones that are coolest, then we'll okay, we need to mass produce this. So really, the Barrel Selects is our testing line. We don't sell anything that's not good.
Sure,
but
you got to test through some stuff, right?
Exactly. You got to throw some experiments out there, and we throw away a lot of stuff too.
Oh, I bet.
There's been, when you learn how to make whiskey, there's a lot of mistakes along the way.
There has to be.
Which is, how do you pay the bills? And well, we're blenders. That's the way we do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you're heading to a staff training because you are dedicated to the education element of whiskey, which is a lovely thing, after enjoying a dram with me, which I appreciate. So what of the High West, if you had, I know there's a bunch of limited stuff, and I remember trying maybe a 20-plus year rye one time when I was in California, a really, really stubby bottle. But for you, what's the one?
The one,
the
special release?
Yeah, that you are so glad that you've tasted, or so glad that you might have a bottle.
Oh, I didn't bring any cool bottles.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But let's see. I really, really like, it's not,
if it's TTB record, you can say.
No. I think a lot of the cool stuff, the really, really rare stuff is usually only released in Utah.
Uh-huh.
So I'm fortunate that when I go up there, I was like, ooh, I'm taking that home and I'm taking that home.
Amazing.
So last year we did a short release of 16-year-old rye, just straight 16-year-old rye.
Wow.
That was it.
Barton, you said.
I don't know if this one was. I think it was Barton, but I'm
Okay.
not sure. And so it was so limited that I couldn't even get a sample. I had to pay cash for it.
Wow.
Full price. And I bought 2 bottles. So I was like, that was
must have been good.
Yeah, I have about, I don't know, I've got about a 0.3 left. I'm hanging on to that. The 21-year-old that was out 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That one's good. I found after I started, it came out before, it was pretty much gone by the time I started working at High West.
Yeah.
I found a bottle on a retail shelf.
Oh, no kidding.
And I was like, do you know what that is? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay, I'm buying it. I was like, so
just make sure there's no discrepancy, or I'm going to buy that thing that no one can buy.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then the funny thing is it lingered. There was some at Poison Girl.
Oh, really?
It's crazy because I would go into Poison Girl and there you carry everything that we have ever. And so I'd go in there and I was like, what do you got? And like, oh, we got some 21. And I was like, oh, cool. This was years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'll drink some 21. They're like, it's $25 a shot. I'm like, I don't care.
Do it, yeah.
And so drank it. And so one time I was in there, I finished the bottle. And so next time I go in there, I go back to Houston, and I go back into Poison Girl because they got good whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I don't even want to. Tell me what you got. Well, Rendezvous Rye, I got this. I got 21-year, very rare. I was like, no, you don't.
I finished
I
your
was
bottle.
like,
What are you talking about?
I killed that bottle last time. He's like, it's on the list. It's here. I was like, no, it's not. I'm like, I know, dude. He's like, no. I'm like, he says, just wait. And he goes off to the back, disappears, like 15 minutes, comes back with a brand new, unopened bottle.
Oh, my
20.
gosh.
I was like, how many bottles did you buy? And so I was like, all right, crack it open. Let's go. Let's do a round. And he's like, 20. I was like, yeah, I know how much it is. It's fine. I'm like, go ahead, go for it. So, and then I was like, I'm going in there and asking for it every time. And unfortunately, the last time I go in there, I was like, oh, please have some. No, it's gone. He's like, no, we ran out about a month ago. I was like, damn it, I need to come in here more often.
Couple more on that.
So
whole
that's
thing.
good. I really enjoy the new one that came out in Utah. When was it? About a month or so, 2 months ago. Is the 14-year-old light whiskey.
Ooh, okay.
So a light whiskey is anything distilled above 160 proof, but below 190.
Okay.
So typically to be a straight whiskey, you have to be below 160.
Yeah.
So 160, 190 is called a light whiskey. Above 190, it's called vodka.
Uh-huh.
So right just shy of vodka. This was, I think, originally 185. And typically it's a blending component.
Mm-hmm.
So, Scotch, they use it for, blending, for blended scotches. Things like, Crown Royal, Seagram 7,
Right.
Canadian whiskeys, things like that. And this was actually originally made at MGP.
Okay.
It was a Seagram's blending component. They essentially lost a barrel in an age for like 14 years.
Oh my God.
And so I had it originally. David found it and bought it 2 or 3 years ago, and I had it originally 2 years ago when I was just 12, and it was awesome. We actually stole a bottle and drank it all.
Oh, it's amazing.
in one afternoon, and then they just released it. So it is a very light whiskey, very pale golden color. It's delicious though. It's not it's not this.
Yeah. This is, but that's the thing, man. this is both young at heart, but yet very mature.
I think you gotta have variety. You know.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I like. That's the beautiful thing about the craft spirits thing. I was like, you know, but you know, in the old days, I actually did not like whiskey, you know, 10, 20 years ago because it was crud.
Yeah.
You know, it was this mass-produced stuff, and it's like, tastes like crap. You know, now with, you know, all this nice aged stuff that's, you know, with people who are paying attention to what they're doing in small batches, I mean, it just tastes so much better.
It's a great time to be alive, and it's a great time to be drinking whiskey.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're riding the wave right now.
Yeah, and this is lovely to be sipping some rye with you, Chris. And it's been a pleasure chatting and kind of. I think you'll open a place. I think it'll take some time, but I think you'll. I think I'll do it, man. And you got such a nice resume for all of it, and you can talk to distillers and they can understand too. You've got the ability of translation, right?
It was funny because I was actually at a. What's the vacuum distilled one from England? This gin.
Oh, Bloom? No, not Bloom. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
So I was at their dinner, and I'm listening to him describe this process of it's vacuum distilled, we put in the thing, and it was like really, really technical. And after then, I didn't say anything. And after the dinner, I was like, hey man, and I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
I knew the guy. I mean, we had a relationship, and I was like, you know, you might get a better response if you described it this way.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me like, who the hell are you telling me? You know, obviously he'd been told by the distiller, this is the way you explain it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm someone who knows about distillation, and I know about thermodynamics is what you're talking about. All right. And, you know, why does the boiling point of the alcohol come down?
Under atmospheric pressure, right?
You know, it's like, and like, you can take it for what you want, but I was like, I think that people, and I know people, you know, the way they listen and what resonates with them. So I don't know if he ever took it, but I was like,
was he pissed?
He was just like, no, okay, whatever you say. And he didn't believe that I knew what the hell I was talking about.
But you know that that's really something that's vastly important in this industry, is being able to take all the nerdisms and say like, man, you know what? Let's not talk about proof for a second. Does that taste good to you? How does it make you feel? You know, that's really like the key to this whole thing.
Absolutely. You know, I teach the 101 Whiskey 101 course at UNC. And it's like, how do you teach everything about whiskey in an hour and a half?
Right.
You know, and it's like, really? And not just, you know, how do you make it, but all the different classifications, all the different, you know, scotch and this and that.
Yeah.
All the rules and regulations. It's like, that's a lot. But you need to do it in a way that engages someone, you know, and I think that's an important part of our business, is like being able to have those discussions and not have people turn off that switch.
Totally. And that's the thing with communication at this point too, but you seem to amass, if that's the right way to use that word, an amazing network of people, an amazing career in this industry, and it's been a pleasure chatting, man. Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. I'm fine. I'm glad we finally got to talk. Yeah, me too. It was great. Thanks so much. My pleasure. Well, there we have it. What do you guys think of Mr. Chris Furtado, the one-man show for High West Whiskey in Texas? Spreading the word, spreading the sips, sharing the Rendezvous Rye, sharing a lot of great things. And the latest installment of Midsummer Night's Dram, I think it is Act 3, hits stores here in Texas very soon, and it is another delicious installment. It's great getting to talk to Chris, and it's taken some time, but I'm glad it finally happened. Thank you, Chris, so much for spending some time with me. And again, High West Whiskey success and High West Whiskey Week at Show to V First with Chris. Can't wait to dig into the mind of David Perkins, and I can't wait to share that conversation Thursday with you guys. So thanks, everybody, for listening to Show to V. No matter how many more seasons of Sex and the City you have left to binge on through Amazon Prime, or what kind of shit show this presidential debate's going to be tonight, please keep dancing.